Hey guys, it's Fred and Sheila McCoy, Hatfield McCoy Museum, fredmccoy.com. Sheila's behind the camera.
Hi guys, hope you're having a great day.
Talking to a guy earlier at the museum, and me and him talked for a few minutes and got ready to leave, and he said, "Hey Fred, it sure has been nice meeting you." I said, "Give it some time." Guys, I'll be here all week. Hey guys, watching a video this morning of an older gentleman. I've done videos on him before, but I noticed in the video that he's aging, and so I'm not going to mention him by name. I know that he's distorted the Hatfield McCoy history a lot throughout the few years that he's been studying. It used to embarrass him where he went to college and all that stories that he would tell. He didn't want people to know he's from the mountains and so forth, that he was embarrassed of it. Didn't like the hillbilly name and so forth like that. After they did the mini-series and the Hatfield McCoy thing took off, he wrote a book and decided to be a historian. Anyway, he's really messed some of the history up and stories up, and because he's a very intelligent fella, very good writer, good vocabulary, good English and grammar, unlike Sheila and I. But he definitely doesn't know the history or research the history like Sheila and I have. He says he has and talks it up, but he hasn't. Anyway, without further ado, he says in this video that there was four main characters on each side, the Hatfields and the McCoys. The four main characters on the McCoy side, of course, was Randall, Jim McCoy, his oldest son, Perry Klein, Frank Phillips. He said on the other side it was Ance Hatfield, Chauncey Hatfield, Cap Hatfield, and Jim Vance. And he says he always asked which one of those guys on either side was charged with murder. And he says that all the McCoys were at one time charged with murder. He said most people says Frank Phillips, but he says all of them. And before I go on to the Hatfields, I will discuss that. Guys, you got to understand, when they put a warrant out one time, the governor signed a warrant, not the county attorney, not the Commonwealth attorney, not a prosecutor. The West Virginia governor, Devil Ance's friend, that Devil Ance even named one of his children after him, Willis. And his name was Willis Wilson. Was the governor, what was it, Sheila, 7th governor?
I think
of West Virginia.
So,
and so the governor put out a warrant. He called it a warrant for the Hatfields, the McCoys, the Smiths, anybody that came over from Kentucky and arrested the 9 and took back, or when they killed Jim Vance for resisting, or Bill Dempsey for resisting. The governor himself signed a paper and said that he was putting out a warrant for those guys for coming to West Virginia. If you remember, it went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court ruled that you couldn't do that no more, but at that time they could keep them. So that's not a warrant for murder that was respected, that was honorable. That wasn't from the criminal justice system. That was merely a symbolic thing that the corrupt 7th governor of West Virginia done for Devil Ance in order to have some leverage to deal with. So actually, none of the 4 on that side was ever charged. I'm sorry, there was one that was charged, and that was Perry Klein when he was the sheriff. And he killed a man while he was arresting him and went up on murder charges and was acquitted, of course.
Yeah.
Now on the Hatfield side, he said on the Hatfield side, the ones charged with murder, and of course we've got it on the wall there, is Ance Hatfield, Cap Hatfield, Chauncey Hatfield. He says that Jim Vance was never accused. That was his words. Jim Vance was never accused of a crime or murder. Never accused. You know, accused is a big word. You might say Jim Vance was never officially charged, but to say Jim Vance was never accused, Sheila will post it, and we've done a video on some of this before, and Sheila will post Cotton Top's statement, Charles Gillespie's statement. not only was Jim Vance accused, he was there. He was in charge. Charlie Gillespie says not only was he with them, old man Vance was in charge. Now, this guy goes on to say that Jim Vance never charged with a crime, never accused of a crime. Guys, let me explain something to you about this right here. Ants, according to Sam McCoy's book. Now, Sam McCoy and T.C. Crawford are the only two people that's ever wrote a book or memoirs that lived back in that day, that had first-hand knowledge. Anything else is hearsay. Anything else is copying from one author to the other. But let's go with Sam McCoy's story. Sam McCoy says that Vance Hatfield and Jim Vance went to Ace's house on Blackberry and asked Martha. Martha, this was her words. Ask Martha, where's Asa? She said he's not here. And they followed Nigger Pete's footprints through the snow. They followed Asa Harmon's slave, which was a member of that family. It wasn't just their slave. He was a member of their family. They loved Pete, and Pete loved them. They followed his footprints through the snow where he had taken Asa's breakfast to him in the cave, and they killed Asa Harmon McCoy. Now, you're going to hear a lot through life on this, oh, they were friends. They never killed Asa Harmon McCoy because Martha signed a pension paper that said that he was returning to his unit. Well, see, there's two things that happened there. Either Martha signed that pension paper in order to get that $8 a month to raise those 6 kids, 5 kids, and one in her belly with.
That's right.
Because Asa's gone. He's not coming back. They could have said, hey, here's your $8 a month that's really going to help you out. All you got to do is sign this paper. Or she signed with an X, meaning she don't know how to read or write. Or they wrote down what they wanted, and Sheriff Basil Hatfield, now, of course, Basil Hatfield is Preacher Ance's brother also, but he's my least likely. He's my great-great-uncle. He's a Kentucky Hatfield, but he's my least likely. He fired Frank Phillips for arresting Hatfields for murder. He fired Frank Phillips for doing his job. So that tells me that he's not up and up like Constable Floyd Hatfield, like Preacher Ance, Justice of the Peace Hatfield was. Basil Hatfield went to her as the sheriff and said, sign here, we'll get you some money. And with the paper she put her X on, supposedly, says that Asa Harmon was returning to his unit. Okay, well, if he was returning to his unit, if they had a paper like that that stated that, then that means you can't charge Jim Vance or Ance Hatfield with murder.
With murder, yes.
You can't charge him if it's an act of war, if he's actually returning to his unit. See, he wasn't returning to his unit. They killed him near the cave that he was hiding in. Huh?
He was wounded.
Yeah, he was wounded. He'd been discharged. First time he got wounded, they sent him home to men. He went back. Second time he got wounded, they discharged him. It was over. He couldn't come back. His leg was messed up. So let's go over that. So that's one time that Jim Vance was not charged. Jim Vance helped kill Asa Harmon McCoy. Now, 1865, first killing in the feud as far as that. But he wasn't charged with that. He was accused of it. But when Sheriff Basil Hatfield started to investigate it, instead of charging his cousin from West Virginia, instead of charging Jim Vance, he got Martha her pension. It's in our book, the pension paper that she signed. Now, let's go on. Sam McCoy says, now Sam McCoy said that's in Sam McCoy's book, in his memoirs, that Jim and Ance come to Martha's house, wanting to know where Asa was at. Sam McCoy also says that Jim fired upon the posse when the posse arrived. After January the 1st, when they burnt the cabin down, cabin massacre, and he beat the old woman and killed 2 more kids, the posse took off to West Virginia. January the 8th, 1888, they come up on Thacker Holler, come up on Jim Vance's home place. Jim wasn't there. They talked to a woman out front, according to Sam McCoy, who was there, who actually took up for this woman and said, if you boys are going to mistreat her, I'll go home. I'll get on my mare and go home now. So Sam McCoy, why would he give 2 different versions? Why would he standing up for the Vances, the Hatfields? He's just wanting justice. He said, you all said that we wouldn't shoot unless we were shot at. We wouldn't do, and they all agreed. They got ready to leave. A woman was coming out of the holler, and they spotted her, and they said, who's that? And all of a sudden she hollered and said, where you boys going? What do you want? She said it loud enough so Jim and Cap could hear her. She had just taken their breakfast to them hiding in the woods. Now, all through life, you'll hear them say, oh, Jim and Cap, they were out hunting. You just done the biggest crime of your life next to the 3 McCoy boys. You burnt people's houses down, killed 2 more kids, and beat an old woman. And you decide, I think I'll go get a buck. Yeah, okay. You all believe that if you want. They were hiding in the woods. And when the posse spotted them, Jim Vance shot at him. And when he shot, everybody opened up and returned fire. Thank you, babe. And Jim Vance was killed. Sam says he fired up on the posse. Do we believe a 15-year-old boy? This guy says when he was 15 years old, or when he was a young boy, he was delivering newspapers, and he asked his uncle, great uncle, who's also my great uncle, ask him, what happened during the feud? He says that the real kicker, Jim Vance, lived almost 60 years and never charged with the crime. That's what he says. He says Jim Vance lived almost 60 years and never charged with the crime. Guys, Kentucky doesn't charge you. Why would you indict somebody that's dead? On the 28th of January, something like that, Cat, Johnsey, Tom Chambers, Cotton Top, Alex Messer, a bunch of these guys were charged. They were indicted by a Pike County grand jury. Not the first grand jury in 1882 for killing the 3 McCoy boys. This is different. This is for burning the cabin down and killing Alifair and Calvin. Jim Vance wasn't there. He wasn't indicted, this gentleman says. Now, this gentleman's a smart man. So, in his mind, there's no doubt, or at least one time in his mind, he knew the truth. He says he wasn't there, they would have indicted him. Really? Indict a dead man? Because, see, Jim Vance was killed January the 8th, 1888. Tombstone's in here somewhere. January the 8th, 1888. Show that, babe. Thank you. And that tombstone was put up after nobody even knows where Jim Vance was buried. Still don't know where he's buried. It's an unmarked grave until 1997 when they started coming up with this Hatfield McCoy promotional thing in Pike County for tourism. And they decided, let's go out and put tombstones up on all these graves where people will have something to come and visit. So that's when they put that tombstone up there and act like that was Jim Vance's grave. Nobody knows where Jim Vance is buried. Nobody's ever been to his grave in all these years until after the miniseries. Now all of a sudden everybody knows, oh, he's big. But anyway, I'll move on. So Jim Vance wasn't charged with the crime because luck was always with him, or at least corruption.
Fear, because he threatened everybody.
Exactly. Thank you, punk.
He did. He threatened
the last
everybody.
one. Some people says, Jim Vance wasn't at the McCoy pawpaw trees. When the McCoys were tied to the pawpaw trees, here's your people indicted, guys. Now, you know, I heard this gentleman a while back say there was 23 people indicted. Put it on there a minute. 23 people indicted. When you all get a chance, they're also in our book, but count those names there. There's 20 names there. 20 names, not 23. There's 20 people indicted. He says 23. So I don't know where the other 3 was. Sheila and I's never found them. But I'll tell you who's not on there. It's Jim Vance.
Yep.
Now, why is Jim Vance not on there? Because, see, he's not dead at this time.
Nope.
So he should have been charged there. He's exactly right. Had he been there, he should have been charged. Unless Sheila and I talked to him several times, but we went up to the McCoy Cemetery years and years ago, talking to John Vance.
Yep.
That owns the cemetery where the McCoys are buried, the 6 McCoy children. Thank you, baby. Go ahead. And John Vance tells us, now John Vance was the great-grandson of crazy Jim Vance. John Vance was like Stephen Hatfield over at Sarah Ann. Stephen Hatfield, tell you the truth, it didn't matter if it's his family, my family, he believed in the history and just tell it like it was, no matter the good, the bad, and the ugly. That's the way John Vance was. Of course, everybody wants to brag on their family, but John thought it was admirable that Jim Vance was that mean. And Jim was that mean. And John Vance told us in his own words, and right there she is behind the camera.
He sure did.
And Sheila wouldn't lie or make something up for it. I'll just be honest with you. And he tells us that he was a young kid when he heard his mom and dad and people talking to his grandparents or something about how they killed Jim Vance and what happened back in the feud days and all that. And they said that Jim had bragged to his family why he was never on the list, why he was never indicted for being at the pawpaw trees. Now you can bet if Johnson and Cap and Wall and Devil Ants and all these people's at that pawpaw tree because Ellison's dead. Ellison laid there for 2.5, 3 days before he died. So even if Jim hadn't been there when it first happened, he was there now. You can bet he came to see what was going on. Now, Jim was at the pawpaw trees. John Vance says he was at the pawpaw trees, and after they killed the 3 boys, Devil Ants got on his horse and took back off across the Tug River. And Jim Vance walked over with his gun still in hand and shot each one of the boys with their heads hanging over in the head. One bullet, symbolic. They were already dead. This was a symbolic shot. And he looks back at the guys, the rest of them that's up there on that list. He looks back at them. He said, boys, if every one of you ever says I was here, I'll kill you and I'll hunt your family down and I'll kill them.
He sure did.
Now, you know, some of these people may not have cared that much for themselves, but their family members, their wife, kids, so forth, whatever Jim said, they took him at his word and they took that for the truth, because you don't see Jim Vance's name up there. Now, why a person would say there was 23 indicted originally, I don't know. We can't find that. So either he was named on the first indictment or he was never named at all. We don't think he was ever named at all. We think people, Cotton Top and different ones, they thought Jim Vance was the baddest. They thought he was crazy. Crazy Jim Vance. That's how he got his name. Going on. He says that he heard these stories when he was a young kid delivering newspapers, and he remembered them. Now, he says that he always thought Perry Cline was a coward and all this and that, but his uncle, our uncle, Ransom Hatfield, said that Perry Cline was one of the toughest fellas back there. He was the only one that wasn't scared, wasn't afraid to take those 9 fellas to Louisville when they went. If you'll look at the newspaper article and all that, Sheila posted it somewhere, but Randall McCoy was, one guy says, the same guy, he says, Randall McCoy never led nobody nowhere. Really? Yeah. Because Randall McCoy led those 9 people to Louisville jail. He led them there. Him and Jim McCoy. Jim McCoy was a deputy sheriff. The real kicker is that he lived 60 years and was never charged with a crime. Uncle Ransom said Perry Cline was the only man in Pike County brave enough to take the 9 Hatfield gang to Louisville. Really? Well, we'll show you a newspaper. Of course, Sheila and I like to show evidence.
Yeah.
Now, this gentleman talks when he was on his bicycle as a little boy. He remembers Ransom Hatfield. That's also my kinfolk. I'm Hatfield and McCoy.
Yeah.
Act of War. 3 McCoy boys. Cabin massacre. Let me just cover my bases. It says in the book Perry Cline was scared of his shadow. Yet he says Uncle Ransom told him that Perry was only... My question is, if he was a young boy when Ransom Hatfield told him this, that Perry Cline was one of the toughest men there was and wasn't scared of nothing, why would he write in his book 50 years later that Perry Cline was a coward, that Perry Cline was scared of his shadow? Does that make sense? His uncle told him that. He believed everything else that supposedly came from Ransom Hatfield. But Ransom told him Perry Cline was tough, but he wrote in his book that he was a coward, scared of everything. History Channel, mini-series and a book. You know, again, he didn't come out with books. So many people after the miniseries came out, everybody started writing books.
Oh, sure.
Everybody started researching the feud. Even people that was embarrassed to be called hillbilly, embarrassed to be from Pike County, embarrassed to be from Appalachian Mountains. Sheila and I covered Perry Cline indicted. He says that no book writer has ever covered Perry Cline being indicted as sheriff for murder. Really?
Oh, well.
Well, like Sheila says, if you ain't got something good to say, don't say nothing else. So that's when Sheila says that, she's just agreeing with me, but she's not going to say nothing. Guys. She done. I got the word.
Yeah. Hope you all are having a great day, guys. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, and share. We'll catch you on the next one. Bye.
I don't know if we've ever showed this cat. We probably have. I don't think there's much in here we haven't showed or shown. But I seen a thing this morning on 3rd Battalion at Paris Island. I was in the H Company, 3rd Battalion. There's little mementos and things that we've kept throughout the years. That's Sheila years ago.
Oh.
I seen one. Oh, there's my mother. Look at that big beehive. That was back in the 70s when, and that's at Paris Island. She came, and that's my little sister Bridget. Came to graduation to watch, and
There you go.
yeah, that's when they was doing the going to Marine Corps recruiting offices and killing some of the recruiters and stuff. And there's the lawsuit, the fictitious lawsuit against John Vance
There you are in your
and
police
Barbara.
uniform.
Yeah.
Your police uniform, when you were a Marine.
So anyway, Sheila and I are going to put this one in the books. I got more to say, but I know better. Okay, here it is.